Hey food fans, welcome to Cooking Like a Pro with Chef Cal and me, Mrs. Chef, his wife Christa DeMercurio. We're dishing out culinary intuition, insights, and imagination to spice up your meals and make cooking more fun. On today's episode, my chef husband and I discuss building charcuterie boards, seasoning and grilling filet mignon, and using winter citrus in salads and kiwi in marinades. Let's dig in. Today's episode was broadcast and recorded live on AM/FM radio.
Welcome, one and all. Welcome to Cooking Like a Pro. You have found Chef Cal and Mrs. Chef Christa.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, yeah, there we go. So, hey, we want to talk about charcuterie. Charcuterie is something that's been around for a while. It actually was invented in France. The first charcuterie boards were made with cheese and, well, things that would last a while. Meats that had been cured or salted. It actually dates way back. I know they used to use offal. Now, offal is something that you don't see very often. Now, we were raised on it, but the offal is the entrails. The offal is the guts, everything that's inside, the heart, the liver, maybe not necessarily the guts, but the stomach, the entire inside of the
I would not want to see that on our charcuterie board. That's disgusting.
Well, they've advanced.
I hope so.
Yeah. So, but I mean, there's such a great, I don't know, I like to call it snack, right? It's a snack board. We talk about finger food and you have people over for, it can easily replace a meal or it can just be the preface of the meal. But, from the amuse-bouche, and I know when we competed in, trained in competition, one of the categories they gave us it was the 2004 Olympics, and it was tapas. So we had to study tapas, and the word tapa means lid. So it's just a piece of toast on a lid that would sit as a lid on a
beverage,
a glass of glass of wine.
It's Spanish.
Then it would have some Serrano ham or something cool on there, but a amuse-bouche is one bite. That's how we used to always decide it and decipher it. And a d'oeuvre is 1 to 2 bites. A tapa is usually 3 to 4 bites. And I put the tapa in the same category as an appetizer. An appetizer, 3 to 4 bites as well. And we used to call appetizers, you might use them for sharing also, but we used to use the term knife and fork. When you get to a point where you're having an appetizer or you're having a food and you have to begin using a utensil, they call it knife and fork. Then it'd no longer be a amuse-bouche or an hors d'oeuvre or a finger food or a finger sandwich or a canapé or, whatever.
So does a charcuterie board fall into these categories? Because they're kind of make your own type thing. It's not something that's presented to you. It's something that you put together yourself.
I think a charcuterie board can be anything you want. And I think that's the exciting part of it. Is you can just be, real variant on whether, I was just looking and talking to Caitlin, and she's got Cask and Cleaver right around the corner down here in downtown, right around the corner from off of Market Street here. And they do classes as well. I noticed online they do chocolate boards. A charcuterie board,
holidays.
A chocolate board, yeah.
So what would you do? Okay, so I'm thinking go to someplace like Cask and Cleaver that has a really nice cheese shop to get some really nice cheeses, but you can still go to your local supermarket to get your basic breads. Yeah. So you can balance it, not have everything be super expensive. Yeah.
Well, they use it. They kind of have this range that they call when you're teaching or training people how to do charcuterie. When I did it, it was always 3-3-3-3. So it's 3 cured meats of some sort, 3 cheeses of some sort, 3 starches, crackers, bread, crostini, and then 3 either relishes or even fruit. But again, there's no limit. You can, do whatever it is you want. When I was talking to Caitlin, she said that they got 50 to 60 cheeses, and I'm a cheese fanatic. Even though I'm lactose intolerant, I love cheese. But yeah, you could make one just all cheese. You could do,
If you do 3 cheeses, would you do a mild cheese, a little bit stronger cheese, and a really strong cheese to kind of cover the...
Yeah, I think you want to get creative. You want to cover all the different, flavor profiles. I think that's a, good thing to kind of consider because not everyone likes, for example, with me and you, I like spicy and you not so much, but you still like spicy. Probably spicier than the average person, especially if it's curry or something, but not as spicy as me. So you have to have a variance of variety.
And then what kind of meats? Typically you see salami.
Yeah, dried cured meats. ham can go on one. Ham is a cured product. You can have ham and eat it raw right out of the package because technically it's cured, so it's cooked. But they haven't, boiled it yet. I know that when I was in Germany, I went into a person's home and it was just, if they want to cook for you, they just put a sign out in front of their little, village A-frame, grass hut looking weird thing. And you go in, you just sit in their living room and they feed you. And I had never had it, but they called it raw ham. Now we were in the Black Forest, so it was Black Forest ham, which, when the pigs in the Black Forest, the trees are so thick together that the sun doesn't get down to the foliage. So all the stuff that the pigs eat is really, very lush and nutritious and good for you and all that.
The truffles?
Yeah. I'm sure they're getting their share of truffles too. But again, good stuff. I mean, but I had never had raw ham. But it was just ham served on a piece of pumpernickel with some mustard on it. So I think you make things small. The rule that I've always used when doing is I look at the number of bites, and it depends on what the occasion is. If you're going to do an event and you're planning on having a meal afterwards, then you figure around 9 or 10 pieces per person, and then kind of times that out and then kind of figure out what's going to be popular. And you can make some educated guesses on that. So 9 to 10 pieces. But then if that's all they're having, then it goes up to between 22 and 24. But an average meal, again, remember, is 35 to 36 bites. But that's coming to you as a coursed meal. Again, they're grabbing their own. There's no real control other than, the size of what you cut it, which is, I would think would be maybe 1 bite, 2 bites, no more than that.
So real life story. So we had Thanksgiving. We've been talking about Thanksgiving a lot on the show. Last week, one of our family members brought and made a charcuterie board right in front of me. I did not eat dinner. I just had the charcuterie. I loved it. It was fantastic. Salami.
Yeah, I think she went to Trader Joe's or something. Yeah, she had some good stuff too.
Oh, the persimmons.
Yep.
The persimmons. I gorged on persimmons all afternoon. It was so yummy.
Well, and stick around for the final segment because we're going to be talking about winter fruits, and of course persimmons are one of the high ones. But yeah, you can really do almost anything you want. Again, it starts with a variety of meats, a variety of cheeses, pickles, relishes, veggies. Then dried fruit,
nuts.
Yeah, nuts. I've seen nuts on there. I mean, you can really tailor fit it. And I don't know what they do at Cass and Cleaver. You can call and ask Caitlin. But I think that they're pretty flexible. And actually, she does classes, so you could go down there and learn how to do them, I suppose.
Well, I did one last year that we did a mustard. We made our own mustard. We had a jelly. We had a cream, so you could layer different things together, try different combinations.
Well, I think that's it. You want to enjoy as many different flavors and taste sensations. You also have to understand, though, that cheese does coat your palate. So if you have cheese and maybe you have some citrus on there, so that can kind of cut the palate. So you can, because now you put cheese in your mouth and it coats your tongue, you're going to have much less flavor of anything else.
The dried pineapple we had last week.
That dried pineapple was good, too. So, anyway, we're going to take a quick break. And this is Chef Cal and Mrs. Chef Christa on Cooking Like a Pro. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Cooking Like a Pro. A little bit of Jimmy Buffett there. Yes, where's the beef? I'm talking about beef here for this segment. My wife has been, bugging's probably the wrong word because...
showing interest in learning.
That's a much better way to put it. Better way to put it. Maybe I should be thinking that when you ask me something. But anyway, so we did filet. That's what Dad wanted for his birthday dinner. So I did a bunch of roasted garlic and a bunch of shallots and this kind of thing. And then roast off came out real good. It was what we had at our first restaurant, DeMercurio's Filet a la Casa. That one's going to be in the cookbook. That'd be probably the second chapter of the cookbook we're working on.
What temperature did you cook that meat to? Because it was absolutely perfect.
130, but it cooked it real slow.
But you talked about that you cooked the filet mignon slow. What do you mean by slow, and what would be fast?
Well, when you're looking at high temperature, which would normally be what I had the method that I cooked it, because I did char grill it. I cooked it outside.
Out on the barbecue.
Yeah, but I cooked it slow. I turned the heat back down. Once I got a sear, I turned the heat way back down, and once it got to 125, which is rare, I pulled it off and set it to the side on a platter. So it was still sitting there, but it got a chance to cool back down. Because all that activity, once you start cutting into meat that's really hot, temperature-wise, all the juice is going to run out of it.
So if you pulled it at 125, that should carry over cooked to about 130.
That's what it did.
But what kind of time frame are you talking? 15 minutes on the grill, 5 minutes on the grill?
Yeah, I would say it's always going to depend on the thickness of your meat, the temperature of the grill, the type of grill, a variety of things. But generally speaking, you're talking no more than 3 to 4 minutes on per side for something like something that's going to be in the rare side. And if you're going to do 4 flips, and that's even going to be too long.
And then if you did on a barbecue, did you do what they call indirect cooking, where the flame was on the outside or directly under?
Flame was underneath what we call char grilling, char broiling. Char broiling. Now, as opposed to if there wasn't a grill, then it would be a flat top, and then we use the term griddling, like cooking a pancake.
Did you season it beforehand?
I seasoned it right beforehand, and I remember we talked a little bit about that. And so I got
the question wrong.
Yep, I got I think I might even ask you. I was doing it kind of as a class. So it was just me and her, and there's me showing her how to do cut down a tenderloin. And a tenderloin, when you cut a tenderloin, that's the primal cut, what we call, the butchers call it primal cut. It's whole. When you cut a tenderloin into steaks across the grain, then you have what's called a filet mignon, which most people have heard of that. You cut a strip loin. You have a New York, a lot of people have heard of that. A top sirloin, for a top sirloin steak that's cut out of the sirloin. If you keep those 2 pieces of meat, those primal cuts together with the bone, and you cut it at the thin side, what are you going to get?
Okay, so we've got the New York and the filet. You've either got a T-bone or a porterhouse.
At the thinner part, you have a T-bone, and at the thicker part of the filet, you have a porterhouse. And it's good to know that, folks. If you go out, you're going to pay a lot more money for a porterhouse than you will a T-bone. And the difference is go to the inside round of where the filet is touching the bone, and it has to measure across the diameter of that filet. Has to be at least 1.5, 1.25. 1.25 inches wide. If it's any thinner than that, it's a T-bone. If it's any thicker than that, you got a porterhouse. So porterhouse has more filet. But anyway, but we were talking about meat. So we got into this big conversation about meat, taking notes about meat. And when it came to seasoning them, one of the things that I make sure I never put on until right before I cook it, you learned, which is what?
Salt.
And because why do you wait till the end to put salt on?
Because the salt pulls out the moisture.
And a lot of people will salt things way too fast. And when you open up one of these large pieces of meat, and if there's any blood or juice in the bottom, if there's juice, it's blood. That's what it is. We use the term purge, but you're still paying the same price per pound for that. The blood that's in there too, so you don't want to have a whole bunch in there, but you certainly don't want a lot of it running out. And salt, that's what we use to dehydrate things, right? That's what they used to use to, pack things and preserve them, and take them, make your jerky or if you're going to brine something. A lot of people brine things to add flavor back into them. So but for steaks, though,
if you wait to put salt on,
you can put everything else on there.
Pretty much avoid a seasoned salt. Do other herbs and seasons, and then add your salt.
No, season it with whatever you want. Just don't put any salt on there. And if you're going to use something like Lowry, so
hit that right before you cook it.
Yeah, then put that on right before you cook it. That would be my recommendation, so you don't want to pull any moisture out of it. But there's a ton of, I think that when you first look at the meat, and when you're thinking about it for a meat purchase, look at one of the things, fat content. I ran into this lady at she was buying some New York steaks right next to where I was buying the filet down at Costco. So we had a fairly long conversation. I gave her one of your cards. And but anyway, it was about the fat, the marbling, and she was getting New Yorks. And when you're cutting New York steaks off of a strip loin, there's a nerve end that drops down, and you really don't want to get those because that's going to be a really, really tough piece to get through where that nerve end comes down. So I was just kind of showing her how to find that.
And you just cut that out? Now
you buy some steaks that don't have it in it.
But if that's all you can get, would you cut it out?
If I cut it out, I'd be turning into stew meat. You can't just put an indention in it, because if you've ever had a steak that balled up when you cooked it, it kind of balled up. like, Jiffy popcorn.
Shrinks.
Yeah, it shrinks. So if you cut it, just break that around maybe 5 or 6 times. It's not going to, curl on you, but you're not taking it out of there. But then again, if you want a steak that's well done, the toughness is going to, cook out, but you don't want the ball. But she was, made a comment about the fat in there. She says, "Oh, I don't want the fat in there." I said, "Well, if you do want the fat in there, that's the marbling. The fat that's on the outside, the exterior of your steak or your roast. Remember, you're paying the same amount of weight per pound for that. So you want some to protect it, but you don't need a lot on the outside. But the marbling on the inside is really what you pay for. Now remember, back in my apprenticeship, there were 6 different grades of meat, and they went all the way down to utility, which was for making dog food. And then a while back, I'd say it was somewhere in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, they changed it from all of these different grades to just being 2. It was either choice or
prime.
Prime. Yeah, prime would be set. There was prime. It wasn't prime. It was just everything else was choice or lower. So you could get a tough cut of meat. Because remember, let's say the prime rib portion of the animal is beautiful marbling. That doesn't mean the whole animal is going to be that way. Needing to know how you want to cook it is the first thing you need to look for. Are you going to roast it in an oven? Are you going to pressure cook it? Are you going to Instapot it? Are you going to crock pot it? Are you going to bake it, roast it, grill it, broil it? Whatever you're going to do, that's the very first thing you need to know, because if you're going to use a cooking method to break down the meat to make it tender, then why not get meat for $7 a pound instead of meat for $16 a pound, right?
And different cuts have preferred cooking methods.
Yeah. Well, I break them down into dry cooking methods and wet cooking methods. A dry is for a piece of meat that's already going to be naturally tender, and that's going to be quick searing, sauteing, char grilling, regular grilling, something like that. And then the heavier meats are going to take a longer time to cook. We call those wet muscles, so they're going to be using a wet cooking method. But the liquid, the fat, the waste we talk about, you don't want any off color, and you don't want any off odor. And they should also be firm to the touch.
Well, it was interesting when you cut the steaks the other day. They changed color as the air hit them. There was like a blue red, and then there was like a warm red as it changed color over time. Yeah.
It oxidizes quick. You leave meat out on the counter, and it's going to change really quick. I mean, not quite as quick as an avocado, but pretty gosh darn close. Because that air isn't doing it any good. That's why meat is packed, in such a heavy plastic, so it makes sure that it's, the enzymes are trapped in there. They break down that connective tissue, and then you get a nice tender piece of meat.
When do you marinate?
You can marinate almost any time. It just depends on, you can do a quick marinade. You can do a thin marinade or a longer marinade. And matter of fact, we'll talk about that when we come back for the next segment. The Chef Cow, Mrs. Chef Christa, cooking like a pro. We will be back in just a moment. All right, welcome back. Again, you found us cooking like a pro. You can also send in. You can send in a question. You can go to cookinglikeapropodcast.net.
Yes, you can.
Cookinglikeapropodcast.net.
You can text from your phone. Yeah. And we will not respond to you. We will address it on the next podcast.
Yeah. You asked me the question about marinades, and there's a variety of ways of doing it. But I first off go back to the original thought of what I said. Think about the cooking process that you're going to use. And think about maybe is there some sort of ethnic direction you want to, but you got to figure that flavor profile, and you have to be careful that you don't, you don't want to spend a bunch of money. You don't want to buy filet mignon and put ketchup on it. You don't want to, buy lobster and dip it in margarine.
So you would not marinate a filet mignon. You would let it have its own flavor.
No, it's already tender enough, and the flavor's going to soak through quick. If you did, that would be somewhere where you'd use a quick marinade, maybe have it in there for maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and then go straight to the grill with it. But remember, the flavor profile. Like a lot of people will think lamb, and it depends on, you are what you eat, so it depends on where it comes from. And if I think about lamb from Australia or lamb from New Zealand, which is quite a bit different than lamb in America because it's raised on grass and seed, where normally the American lamb is feed. They're going to taste. You are what you eat. You're going to taste like what you eat. So they're going to take on different flavor profiles. But in a place where they eat, they're just grazed wild, like a New Zealand lamb, you're going to get lamb that has and I'd hate to use this word gamey because I'm not going to go that direction. Not gamey, but a stronger flavor. If it's gamey, then it was killed incorrectly.
Is Australian or New Zealand lamb stronger?
Oh, New Zealand by far. On my restaurants, I always had a rack of lamb. I always used Australian because they had a bigger eye.
But you can get the Australian lamb at Costco. That was the last time we got lamb, and it was I'm not a lamb person, but it's a very mild lamb that you can get there.
Yeah. Mild lamb, and well, that's the thing, but I still want lamb. If I get American lamb, sometimes, depending on what they feed it, it almost tastes like beef. It just doesn't have a distinct enough flavor, and that's what I want when I get lamb. When I get lamb, I want it to taste like lamb. I just, want a good chop. But one of the things I wanted to touch on, when it came to, picking out your proteins, and some of this will go with seafood as well, but most of this is designed for, meat proteins, meat being beef, pork, chicken, duck, that kind of thing. Is there, you don't want the meat to be bright. You don't want any discoloring. You certainly don't want anything slimy. Okay? Something slimy or off smelling, just don't do it. If you're not sure and it looks a little off colored, I poke a hole in it and smell it before you buy it. Now, if you do that and you end up, whether you want it or not, take it back to the butcher and ask them if they can, rewrap it for you, or especially if you're going to put it back on the counter. Make sure that it gets rewrapped. But there's nothing wrong with, kicking the tires before you buy the car. And that brings us to things like sell-by dates. A sell-by date, they say by law a sell-by date should be at least 10 days after you sell it. But I'm not buying chicken and then eating it 10 days later. Yeah, So I think you have to just look for these factors, but the sell-by date should give you some sort of an idea. Use by date means either use it when you buy it, you use it, or freeze it. And remember, a freezer is not a hospital. Okay? Freezer's not a hospital, folks. If something's not quite good, throwing it in the freezer is not going to make it better. Okay? It's just going to maintain where the badness that it has. So
when we shop at Holiday Market, they have a bin where things are marked down because they are closer to the sell-by date, next day. Yeah. So but they are still good for how long?
Of course. For up to 10 days. They say up to 10 days. When you open it up and it's been in the fridge for a period of time and you're maybe not sure, but first off, date it. Date everything. Open up my refrigerator. There's nothing in my refrigerator that Christa hasn't put blue tape on and the date.
When I open it, I definitely date it, so I know that the date that the air started getting to it.
Yep. Well, that's oxidation. And anytime the air is, I'm trying to think if there's ever a time where air is going to be your friend when it comes to the kitchen. I mean, maybe when it's hot. But anyway, 10 days, USDA, says certain things like odor, texture, color, the appearance. I mean, first off, I tell all my students, and I tell everybody this, I said, if it doesn't look like something that you would eat, then throw it away. It's never worth taking the chance.
I'm thinking of gray hamburger.
Throw it away.
Does ground beef have a shorter shelf life because it has been opened up and exposed to air with all the different cuts?
Exactly why. That's exactly why, because it's been exposed to air. It's got more surface area exposing it to air, and that's one of the things that you want to look for when you're buying it. But I think that the 10-day thing might kind of fall back into that. Don't believe everything on the internet.
I wouldn't go that far. Yeah. I wouldn't go more than 3 to 5 days.
I would with beef. But I mean, not ground beef, but I would with a roast, definitely, or a steak. But also, how well is it sealed? Is air actually getting in there? That plastic is not blocking the air. The plastic you have over your steak and chicken in a grocery store is not thick enough. It's still going to be.
No, it's just like if you put chips in a Ziploc bag, they get soft because they still get exposed to moisture, even if it's in a sealed Ziploc bag, and it is not airtight ever.
They don't have all that chip air. That's what the chip air. I want to know who invented the chip air. The person that's getting credit for half of a bag that's empty of chips. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, we're going to be back for our last segment. Chef Cal and Mrs. Chef Christa back in a sec. Oh, Tutti Frutti it is. Welcome back for the final segment for this week's show in Cooking Like a Pro. Let's go ahead and go to the phone lines. We have Ron. Ron, welcome to the show.
Yes, could I change the subject a little bit?
Oh, sure. Anything about food or something food related?
Yes, it is. I've got a question. What kind of seasoning or spices would you use for salmon?
Oh, salmon's a good one.
Last week, but I think you're talking about the Thanksgiving and stuff, so I held off.
Salmon is one of those things. There's some beautiful seasonings out there, but salmon, as far as the fin fish, is one of the ones that are the fish that I would say has a stronger flavor to it. Anyone that doesn't like salmon, maybe they didn't have it when it was good and fresh.
That's due to the fat and the oil in the fish, correct?
Yeah, the omegas. But I go with a really nice, easy lemon pepper, and there's a lot of different lemon-type seasonings that are out there. But lemon pepper is a good one, and something else that a lot of seafood people use is the the little yellow can with the red lid on it.
Old Bay seasoning.
Old Bay's a good one for fin fish and for seasoning as well. How are you going to cook your salmon, Ron? Have you figured that one out?
I have a toaster oven that has a broaster, a top heating element, and
a broiler from the top.
Sometimes I could even cook it on the barbecue.
Oh yeah. Anything like that? Anything citrus? Even a citrus salad dressing. Just brush it with, and then you could baste it with that as you're going. But what I was going to say is also you could put a piece of aluminum foil down if you're going to have open flame, and that can help continue to capture some of the oil, because the fat in the salmon is really, if you really like salmon, then
okay,
that's what you want.
Now, should salmon be seasoned far in advance or just before?
Oh, I season it right before you throw it on there. You definitely don't want to pull any moisture out of that. But any other questions for us there, Ron?
Hit that?
Any other questions?
No, that's it.
Yeah, well, hey, appreciate you calling in, and maybe give us a call back and let us know how that salmon turned out.
Okay, I will.
All right. Oh, another thing is dill. Dill always goes real good with salmon. Fresh dill, sprinkle some on there. All right. Well, we appreciate Ron calling in. And so, anyway, winter fruits. We're not going to get through this. We'll talk about it next week. Okay. But pomegranates, we talked about that before. Just beautiful, lovely. I just picked the last of them last week, and they're just so juicy, the ones we have.
I have a
chicken's like pomegranates.
Really good salad that I found a recipe for last year. Mm-hmm. And it takes an orange, an apple, avocado, red bell pepper, English cucumber, and some green onion. And it's all tossed together like a poppy seed or a honey mustard type dressing. It is so yummy with the avocado, the creamy avocado, and the crisp vegetables and fruit. I love it.
I love that idea, and especially the concept, because the concept is, in a French terminology, we would call that a bound salad. It's bound. It's not a lettuce salad. It's bound. It's held together with something. And most French bound salads are held together with mayonnaise. You have things like potato salad and coleslaw and chicken salad, those kind of things, potato salad thing. But so those are bound together, pasta salad. But usually something light, like a nice light dressing, make it nice and refreshing. Certainly keep it light, but
yeah, the actual recipe called for like a lemon and ginger and cilantro type dressing.
So what you want to think about on that when you're putting something like that together is think about when you're sitting there at the store, think about what's that going to taste like and what would go good with that. You're looking at this and say, you know what, I bet sunflower seeds would go good in that. Or I bet, how about dried blueberries? Or whatever it is that you're doing, and get creative and have fun. Also, if you're going to make something and you're bringing it over to someone's house for the holidays, practice it first. I would, make sure you practice it first and maybe even test it out on somebody, so because, the holidays are here. We want to keep the holiday cheer going the right direction.
And don't put your croutons on too early, because they will get soggy on any salad that you bring to an event. And
I think you really just need to go nuts. There's such a higher protein and as opposed to croutons. And again, pomegranate seeds are even great. Another one is kiwi. And kiwi has a lot of acid. When I was competing, I was training out of Hollywood Racetrack Park and Casino down there, kind of southeast inland from Santa Monica. And they had this galbi meat marinated. It was a short rib. And they had I don't know, I think they had 15 or 20 restaurants in this place. And we were working out of this one kitchen, and we were doing, fundraising and also training and practice and everything under the sun. And this thing was so good. And I finally was able to steal the recipe. I had to steal that one. But it was, onion, honey, sugar, a little bit of vinegar. But the main, item was kiwi.
In this marinade.
And it just such an amazing flavor, and it's what they call a galbi. I've seen it spelled in a lot of different ways. I've always spelled it at my restaurants, Galbi. Some people spell it.
Yeah, galbi means rib in Korean, but they had a special kiwi sauce that they marinated.
Kiwi marinated, and then they just. And so there's so much sugar in it. Once you throw it on and a short rib is cut across the grain, of course, and it's super, super thin, the way they do it. So it just soaks up all this flavor, and you hit it on there, and you get all this, smoke and coming up, and oh man, it was literally one of the top handful of things that I was always excited about.
Let's say you go to the store and you get a kiwi. How would you turn that into a marinade or a salad dressing?
Just peel it, cut the core out, and do just a chop on it. I think just be a rough chop. If you're going to do it in something where you want the piece to be identifiable, that's really probably, are you using it for a flavor additive, or ask yourself the question if you're using it where you want people to know there's kiwi in there. If so, then it needs to be identifiable. It's kind of like when you're making a pizza, you don't cut the mushrooms super small and thin, because then they look like chewed up pieces of gum on the pizza. You don't want them to look like a mushroom. So think about, it's cut a little bit thicker. Same idea. So,
Can they be pureed into a sauce?
Yeah. And I would puree it, fine dice it. What you're going to use it for, I would do a fine dice on it if I was going to use it for maybe a relish or something like that. But if I was going to put it in a salad, I'd want it to be identifiable. So maybe I peel it and quarter it.
So circling back around to the charcuterie board. What do you think of kiwi on a charcuterie board?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I think that, maybe there's no one that says charcuterie can't be a fruit cooterie or something. I don't know. I think I may have just invented something. I did just see the sea cooterie, so we'll talk about next week as I look into that. But pears, great, adding winter spices to pears and makes a wonderful compote, especially for lamb, duck, even turkey, even some of your white meats. So pears are out there. Speaking
of pears, we make a blue cheesecake with blue cheese in it, and then a pear and onion compote that goes across the top of it. So it's a savory cheesecake that can be used as an appetizer.
Yeah, that was an appetizer on, I can't remember which restaurant. It might have been a couple of the restaurants I've had. I started looking through the recipes for the cookbook, and we have 1,200 of them, and I got to get it down to 80, and again, I've said this before, but it's like picking your favorite child. It's hard to do. But anyway, oranges, grapefruit, it's some citrus, especially coming up out of the warmer areas. Persimmons, my wife mentioned that. A couple different kinds of persimmon. Make sure you get the kind you can literally eat like an apple.
Is that the Fuyu persimmon?
Fuji, F-U-J-I, I believe. No, the Fuji's an apple.
No, I think it's the Fuyu.
Fuyu.
Because there's different types. There's kinds you can eat straight and some that you have to cook.
Yeah, and the stuff that you cook, you want to freeze first because you want to break all the cells inside of it. But again, you want your fruit to be firm. You want it to be, ready to use. If you're buying it and not going to use it right away, maybe keep that in mind as well.
And citrus can hold a really long time.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. Until next time, we hope you'll be cooking up a storm in the kitchen. So we'll be with you again next week with food, flavor, and fun right here on Cooking Like a Pro podcast.